Hey guys, I just wanted to make a quick video to recap everything we talked about during our Zoom session, just in case there's a student that came late, or if you didn't get a chance to actually talk, or if you just need a recap. So that's what this video is going to be. So let me switch to the course site. So the lecture I did was off of this little PowerPoint, so you have access to it now. You just click on it, but I have it already on my computer, so I'm just going to go straight to it. So we're going to be talking about literary lenses. And so the way that you could kind of think about this is like, say you've got like 7 different pairs of glasses, right? And every time you put on a pair of glasses, it's going to allow you to see a story from a different perspective and point of view. So you may put on these pair of glasses and look at like Sonny's Blues from, a cultural theory, or you'll put on the lenses and you'll see it through a psychoanalytical theory. So it's just a different way of looking at a story and kind of connecting it to real world implications. Not always, but sometimes. So formalism is not connected to anything historical or cultural. It's all about what's on the page. So this is like new criticism. It's kind of what we talked about when we looked at Frost and like the Imagist poems, right? And you've already done formalism. You did it in your essay one. You essentially looked at the form, the style, the wording, and you dissected it, right, for meaning. So it's kind of boring. It can be, but in its basis, that's what formalism is. Psychoanalytical theory is a little bit more complicated. This comes out of like Freudian theory. Not always, but it can be. And it's really about like our unconscious, our subconscious, and like what drives us, right? Why we act the way we act, how the mind of a character can tell the story, right? Or what the author is trying to say about the mind of the character or the mind of society. And there's really some basic elements of psychoanalytical theory. You can go out from it, but like the id, right, is your libido. It's your innermost drives. It's your most basic, most animalistic kind of driven decisions. There's the ego, right, and this is kind of like, um, you know, your more conscious being and like your morals and ethics. So you can think of the id and the ego as like the devil and the angel on your shoulder, right? Telling you to do one thing or the other thing and like which way you're going to go. And then there's the super ego, which is a lot about kind of it's like metaphysical, and it also has to do with the Oedipus complex, which again, like we talked about in class, it's the idea that we're all motivated by nature to basically be with our father or mother, which is kind of weird. But it's kind of, it has a lot to do with our inner drives and kind of nurture versus nature. Um, so here's some questions you can ask about psychoanalytical theory. There's more, obviously, but these are some basic ones. Marxist criticism is really more about like the class structure and system, money, economics, how those things play, and what story the author is telling about that. So like The Swimmer is a great example of this. Because he comes from an upper class neighborhood and he has fallen, right? His desire to strive above everyone else or to be in the same line as his neighbors, to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak, leads to his downfall, right? And also his community really doesn't care about him. So all of that stuff is tied into Marxist theory. Um, Here's some questions you can ask about Marxist theory when you're looking at a story. New historicism and cultural studies. So this basically is the retelling of history, right? But it's subjective depending on who's telling it. So like Battle Royale, right, is a good example of, you've got the perspective of the upper class elite white kind of academics, and then you've got the perspective of Ralph Ellison, who's saying like, this is a dangerous kind of thing, like, they're trying to assimilate us and tell us what to think. And so you could really look at that story from that perspective. But you can also apply it to like any of the stories, really, like Sonny's Blues, and talking about how, him being, it's like post-slavery, post-reconstruction, what it means to be a black man in, Harlem during that time, or in America during that time, right, with the civil rights and just everything blowing up. Feminist criticism, so problematic, because I feel like a lot of people don't think it involves men, but I personally think that it needs to. So here's some questions you can ask about it. But I'm much more interested in gender and queer criticism, which is the newest one. But that really looks at gender dynamics, sexual identity dynamics, the innermost desires of characters, their kind of identities. And this could be really interesting when you're looking at Drown, any of the feminist stories that we read, even like Battle Royale, that whole scene with the woman dancing says a lot about gender and, just drives things that motivate characters. Um, Here are some good questions you can ask about that. Post-structuralism and deconstruction is really kind of complicated. It's probably my favorite one, but it can be very hard for most people to kind of dig into it. But it really like rebels against everything else. So it really looks at like all the little details and things that are in the story that tell a bigger story. Um, so, you know, uh, basically like going against binaries or, really, I think Howl is a good example of a story that you could really deconstruct, right? To look at like all the little pieces of the whole. It's really like looking at the little things and how they add up to something bigger. And here's just like a little example of it. But it's a really hard theory to explain. If one of you are interested in it, though, I'd be more than willing to help you get through it because it's a fun one if you're really like committed. And then for homework, I am asking you to basically do some research on literary theories. You can do one or more. Just gather some stuff. Go to Wikipedia, go to Google Scholar, go to YouTube. YouTube has some interesting stuff. Purdue OWL has some good stuff. And then think about how you will apply it to two of the stories we've read, the short stories. And then just write, a minimum half a page about what you think. And then we'll discuss this tomorrow morning when we meet at 9 a.m. So this is due before 9 a.m. tomorrow. So it shouldn't take long, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And that's it. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. And if you have questions, please let me know.